22:15 hours. East Coast time on July 13th, 2026. Somewhere inside CENTCOM, a 5-hour mission clock starts running. 6 targets are already loaded into the system. Bushehr, Chabahar, Jask, Konarak, Abu Musa, and the last is Iran's lifeline. It's called Bandar Abbas, Iran's single most important naval and oil hub on the entire Persian Gulf coastline. Fighter aircraft, aerial drones, and warships are already moving into position, and precision munitions are already assigned to Iranian coastal defense systems, missile sites, drone facilities, and maritime infrastructure. Here's what makes tonight different from a normal strike package. This isn't night 1, it's not even night 2. This is night 3, and by sunrise, CENTCOM will confirm it hit military targets across all 6 locations. Iran will claim it just sank 2 American-linked supertankers in the Strait of Hormuz. Sirens will be screaming over Manama, Bahrain, a country that isn't even the one being bombed. And somewhere over the Gulf, an Iranian projectile is about to land in the western half of a city most Americans have never heard of. But you don't hit such critical points like that by accident. You do that by a master plan, one that the US was going to carry out that night. If you were running Iran's coastal air defense grid tonight, ask yourself something before we go further. With strikes hitting 6 separate points along your coastline in the same window, do you concentrate your interceptors around your most valuable asset that is Bandar Abbas, or do you spread thin and try to protect everything at once? Keep that question in your head. It matters more than you'd think. Picture the map for a second, because geography is the whole story tonight. Southern Iran's coastline curls along the Strait of Hormuz like a claw. Every single target on tonight's list sits somewhere along that claw. Bushehr, home to Iran's nuclear power infrastructure. Chabahar and Jask, key naval access points further east. Konarak, a smaller coastal base. Abu Musa, a contested island sitting almost directly in shipping lanes. And Bandar Abbas, the crown jewel. Iran's main commercial port, its naval headquarters, and critical oil infrastructure all stacked in one city, sitting right at the narrowest pinch point of the strait itself. You don't hit 6 points like that by accident. You hit them because you're trying to make an entire coastline useless for one specific purpose: stopping Iran from being able to threaten commercial shipping. That's not an overstatement, but the literal stated objective CENTCOM posted publicly. The mission was designed to further degrade Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping, striking Iranian coastal defense systems, missile and drone sites, and maritime capabilities with precision munitions. Here's the part that should actually land, though. This is the 3rd night running, not a single strike, not a one-off retaliation. A sustained campaign, night after night, grinding down the same stretch of coastline until there's nothing left standing that could threaten a tanker passing through international water. If you're an Iranian air defense commander watching this pattern develop over 3 consecutive nights, you already know something the first night version of yourself didn't. This isn't going to stop after tonight, which means every decision you make right now isn't just about tonight's targets, it's about what you'll have left standing tomorrow. And somewhere in that calculation, Iran makes a dangerous choice that turns this from a one-sided bombing run into a 2-front night. The mission runs for 5 hours. That detail alone tells you something about the scale here. This isn't a quick in-and-out raid. This is sustained, methodical target servicing across multiple sites hundreds of miles apart, which requires exactly the kind of layered air power the US actually used. Fighter aircraft for strike and escort, drones for persistent surveillance and precision hits on smaller or time-sensitive targets, and warships providing both missile capability and command coordination offshore. What followed next was a planned annihilation. Precision munitions hit coastal defense systems, missile and drone sites, and maritime capabilities at all 6 locations. Air defense and radar sites almost certainly get serviced first, in the opening portion of the window. You take out the eyes and the ability to shoot back before you spend 5 hours loitering over the same coastline. Only after that do follow-on strikes methodically work through missile storage, drone facilities, and port infrastructure. That's standard doctrine. It's not confirmed strike-by-strike sequencing for this specific night, but it's how this kind of extended campaign is built. But somewhere in that 5-hour window, southern Iran goes loud. Explosions across multiple cities, air defense systems lighting up, firing at targets, some of which are real strike packages and some of which are almost certainly decoys or secondary drone activity meant to keep those defenses occupied and burning through interceptors, while the actual precision munitions come in low and fast toward the real targets. By the time the sun starts rising, the picture on the ground is already clear enough for CENTCOM to make its public statement, and clear enough for Iran to start counting damage and preparing its own response. Iran doesn't just sit there and absorb 6 strikes on 6 targets and call it a night, because Iran had a nasty plan. While the U.S. strike package is still working through its target list, something else is happening out on the water. This is where the war stops being a one-sided bombing campaign and turns into something with real, immediate stakes for anyone trying to move oil through the Gulf that night. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announces it has struck and disabled 2 vessels it calls rogue supertankers. According to the IRGC's own account, the ships had turned off their navigation systems, ignored warnings from Iranian authorities, and attempted to pass through what Iran described as a mined route inside the Strait of Hormuz. Sit with that phrase for a second. A mined route. In one of the busiest commercial shipping corridors on Earth, where roughly 1/5 of the entire planet's oil moves by sea. But that moment, Iran was about to pull off a nasty move. A tanker running dark, navigation systems off, transponder silent, moving through waters Iran considers contested territory, is exactly the kind of target Iranian fast attack boats and coastal missile batteries are built to intercept. Small, fast, hard to track on radar in cluttered coastal waters, closing distance before a slower-moving tanker can react. Whether these particular ships were rogue, the way Iran claims, or simply commercial vessels trying to avoid becoming a target by going dark, is exactly the kind of detail that gets fought over in press statements for weeks after, and probably never gets fully resolved to everyone's satisfaction. But the tanker strikes aren't even the strangest part of the night. They were strikes in a country that had nothing to do with the conflict. At 9:52 p.m. Eastern, 4:52 in the morning local time, air raid sirens start sounding across Manama, Bahrain. Yes, it's Bahrain. Not Iran, not even Israel. Not a combatant nation in the way Iran or the US are. It's a small Gulf kingdom, but the only weird thing was it happens to host American forces. Bahrain's Interior Ministry posts directly to the public. Citizens and residents are urged to remain calm and head to the nearest safe place. Not a rehearsed diplomatic statement. A real-time civil defense instruction sent out at nearly 5 in the morning to an entire capital city. Iran's IRGC claims it targeted and destroyed several weapons support warehouses, a satellite communications center, and a building housing U.S. forces at Bahrain's Jufair base, a real active American military installation. Iran has made claims like this throughout the broader war. This is a case where what's certain is the sirens, the drone activity intercepted over Manama, and the panic they caused. But the reality was Iran has been completely panicked. It knows it can't attack the U.S. directly, so it's attacking its allies. But its desperation is completely justified, all thanks to the event that shattered its biggest belief. For years, decades, really, the working assumption in every Western intelligence agency was identical. You can weaken Iran, sanction Iran, strike Iran's proxies, but you cannot touch the top of the pyramid. Khamenei was too protected, too paranoid, too well guarded. That assumption died at 6:45 UTC on February 28, 2026, along with the man it was built around. Here's the thing that makes this genuinely wild, instead of just another airstrike. 10 minutes before the Israeli strike, the U.S. had already launched its own operation. B-1s, B-52s, Tomahawk cruise missiles, hitting Iran's fortified missile facilities and command centers. Real hardware, real specs. Tomahawks cruise at around 550 miles an hour, hugging the terrain at low altitude specifically so radar has a miserable time spotting them, with a range north of 1,000 miles depending on the variant. This is not subtle firepower. This is a sledgehammer wrapped in stealth technology. Within 48 hours, Hezbollah, Iran's proxy army sitting right on Israel's northern border, opens a second front. It dragged Israel into a full ground invasion. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq start eating joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. Missiles rain down on Israeli cities, and debris from intercepted rockets kills civilians as far away as Abu Dhabi, which just takes a second to process that. A city that wasn't even part of this war catches shrapnel from a missile meant for somewhere else entirely. And then it gets genuinely strange. Iranian drones drift into Azerbaijani airspace, a country with zero involvement in this war. One slams into an airport terminal. Iran blames a false flag. Nobody outside Tehran buys that for a second. But here's the moment that should stop you cold, because it's the kind of historical footnote that usually takes a decade to surface. And this one happened in real time, on camera, essentially. Somewhere in the Indian Ocean, an Iranian frigate, the Iris Dina, is heading home from a naval exercise with India, unarmed by the actual rules of that exercise. A U.S. Los Angeles-class attack submarine, the USS Charlotte, finds it roughly 40 nautical miles off Sri Lanka. Charlotte found the Dina, and the Dina was sunk. What's dramatized, based on standard U.S. Navy submarine warfare protocol rather than a released mission log, an attack sub in that scenario would almost certainly have used a Mark 48 AD-cap heavyweight torpedo, wire-guided, capable of over 55 miles an hour underwater, packing roughly 650 pounds of high explosive, designed specifically to break a ship's keel rather than just punch a hole in the hull. That's genuinely how these things are built to kill, not to sink a ship, but to snap it in half. Think about the historical weight of that for a second. This is the first ship sunk by a U.S. submarine in active combat since World War II, the first submarine kill of any nation in any war since the Falklands in 1982. This battle continues till date. But what makes this moment genuinely unsettling was more than any single explosion on the Iranian coastline. A war that started as a bilateral U.S.-Israel-Iran conflict is now setting off air raid sirens in a third country's capital before dawn over what a projectile intercepted mid-flight above a residential city. That's the kind of moment that doesn't show up in a CENTCOM press release headline, but it's the moment that tells you this war has stopped being containable to the countries that started it. Meanwhile, back on the Iranian coast, one crazy detail from the night gets confirmed almost as an afterthought. Iran's Hormozgan provincial government confirms it. A projectile hit the western part of Bandar Abbas. No immediate casualties reported. Read that sentence again, because the restraint in it is almost more chilling than a dramatic one would be. A projectile hits a city that, hours earlier, was the single highest value target on the entire night's list. Iran's main port, its naval headquarters, its oil infrastructure, all concentrated in one place, all sitting inside a strait, carrying roughly a fifth of the world's seaborne oil. That was the most dangerous message for Iran. If you think this was the boldest strikes on Iran, hit the like button to support this content and leave a comment on what you think was the boldest strike on Iran till date. And do not forget to subscribe for more dramatic military analysis. Thank you!